This talk is really about the power of media to change a whole civilization, to change their way of thinking. In the 1980s, the biggest running show in history in the US, and actually still one of the longest running shows, was The Cosby Show. The Cosby Show was about an African-American family that was affluent. Now, Bill Cosby, in the beginning, the show was going to be such that he was going to be a limousine driver, his wife was going to be a stay-at-home mom, and they were going to have 4 children. By the time the pilot was produced, the idea had changed significantly. He was going to be a doctor, she was going to be a lawyer, and there was going to be a 5th child who was going to be in college to show the result of good parenting. Now, the biggest criticism and the biggest praise the Cosby Show received was the same, that it was an unrealistic portrayal of African Americans. But here we are with an African American president, after years of portraying African Americans positively in the media, culminating with 24 that, although did a disservice to Islam and Muslims and Arabs, there were 4 presidents, actually 5 presidents over the 5 seasons. But by the time the 5th president had come about, President Obama was in power. But 2 of the presidents were white and bad, one of whom looked like and acted like Richard Nixon. You had 2 presidents who were good and African American and young and brothers, the Kennedys. The next year, President Obama was voted in. What these shows have in common is that African Americans and racism was never discussed as a topic. That was just a good black president. That was just an affluent African American family. These themes weren't discussed. It was neutral. There was no he said, she said. There was no fighting about what's right and wrong. Just an image, what it could be like. And I think too much our media focuses on what is versus what can be. And the 99 is about what can be. Common picture, I'm sure. People have seen this before. This is something from ancient Egypt. We have the Egyptian alphabet or the hieroglyphics in the background. We have a god in the forefront, and it's also, is it art? Are these letters? Are these gods? There's a kind of a confusion. They kind of all look the same, and that's kind of expected, in a sense. That when the first of the Abrahamic religions came through Moses, Judaism, the second commandment out of 10 from God was the abolishment of art in all forms, whether it represented God or not. Okay? Now that found its way into Islam as well, the idea that art or representations were haram or against Islam. Basically the ideas from the Old Testament, the New Testament, the wordings were translated from Hebrew into Greek and then into Latin, where they were held hostage for 1,000 years. And as language evolved away from Latin in England, in France, in Germany, and etc., as language kind of moved away from Latin, more and more power was in the hands of the Pope. And those 2 men next to the Pope are what broke the grip of the Pope on Europe. We have right next to him, we have King Henry VIII on the right-hand side, and next to him, I'm blanking for a second, Martin Luther from Germany. Martin Luther translated the Bible into German, and King Henry into English. Martin Luther wasn't happy with some of the things being said in the name of religion. King Henry just wanted to get a divorce, right? They had, inspiration comes in all kinds, and not necessarily always for the right reasons. But in the end, what happened was the Pope's power was broken, because all of a sudden there was access to ordinary people to the language of the Bible, and people started making their own interpretations. Now, this led to the Renaissance, and led to things like the Mona Lisa being created. I had a conversation with one of my sons when he was 10, and I showed it to him, and I said, Hamid, what do you think of the Mona Lisa? And he looked at her online, and he said, I like the smile, it's too dark. I saw her in a Yu-Gi-Oh cartoon once. And I said, what do you think of this? And it was a piece of Islamic art up on our wall in Kuwait. And he looked at it, and he was silent. And I said, Hamid, what's wrong? You just told me what you thought about the Mona Lisa. Why can't you tell me about this piece of art? And he said, it's the Quran. Of course it's beautiful. And of course it is. But that's also the problem. The problem is that art, for a long time in our neck of the desert, has been verses from the Quran. And so there's no room for interpretation. What are you going to say? I don't like the color purple on that verse? You can't really get into what it means, because that's controlled by certain elements. And by doing that, it kind of doesn't allow for creativity. Now, the Quran also came down at a time in which idols were being worshipped. And the idea again was about breaking idolatry and having the word of God in its place. Growing up in Kuwait, I heard again and again this idea of al-naql qabl al-aql. We copy before we think. And that's something I resisted, and it got to the point where I would say, you know, if God wanted us to be parrots, He would have given us beaks and feathers instead of minds and free will. Didn't like that very much. Anybody recognize these idols up on the wall? Anybody knows who that is? Who here speaks Arabic? What does the word ahbal mean? Idiot. Well, meet Hubal. This is the pre-Islamic god Hubal from the time of the Jahiliyyah. So we use the word ahbal to mean idiot. But what we're saying is he's a follower of that god. But here's my challenge. If we are saying that Islam has broken the grip of idolatry in our region, but at the same time forcing interpretations that are archaic and thousands of years old, then are we following the meanings behind the words or the words themselves as frozen in time? And if we're following the words as frozen in time, what really differentiates us from the hieroglyphics and the Greek gods? Aren't we just worshipping idols? 3 letters. Put them together for me. Fikr. I heard fikr. What else do you get? What? Kufr. Fikr and kufr. Thought and apostasy. From the same 3 letters. Is this a coincidence? Or is there a message implicit? That creativity is not something you should be doing because it could take you to the way of the devil. Just a thought. When I graduated college from Boston, I came back to Kuwait. And I was writing in the newspapers there, but I wrote in English. One of the things that happens for me and happens for a lot of people is that there was no King Henry, there was no Martin Luther in our neck of the desert. And so the Arabic that's being spoken is different than the Arabic that's in the text. The Quran might as well be in Latin for a lot of people. And in fact, over 1 billion people pray in a language they don't understand. And so so for me, people like me, where the disconnect was so much between the language I was being taught in and the language that I was speaking in, I say, you know what, I'm just going to read in English. You know, I'm not going to sit there feeling bad the fact that I can't, you know. My son came home with 5 words to put in sentences in Kuwait in Arabic. He gave them to me, and I looked at the words, and they might as well really have been Latin. So I called my mom, who teaches philosophy in the Arabic language. I said, Mama, here are 5 words. She knew 2 of them. But you know what? When Hamed calls me about his son's, you know, inability to know the words, I'm not going to know any of them, and so on and so forth. And this disconnect is really a problem. And so what happens, you know, for people like me is I end up going the route of English because English is more accessible to me. So I came back to Kuwait. I wrote in English, and my friends would make fun of me. So who are you writing for? The drivers, the maids? And they were right. There was no internet. I was writing in the Kuwait Times. Who was going to read that? Then a man got fired because of his job in Kuwait. He got fired because of his religion from his job. And I was wondering what planet I just landed on after college. And so I wrote about it in the Kuwait Times. Didn't really hit the spot for me. And I wrote and illustrated my first book for adults until I won an award for children's literature. And kind of had me, you know, which I was kind of part proud and part kind of upset. Like, I had written this for adults. Why am I getting a kids' book award? This is not done for kids. But I had to go with it. And so, but the book was very simple. It was about a land called Bouncy Land where everybody was round. In that society, they judged you based on 2 values: how high you bounce and how fast you roll. That was it. The main character is born as a half circle, can't do either. He's ostracized. They make fun of him at school until the very end, where his difference ends up saving everybody and forces society to reevaluate the importance of diversity. So it's the story of basically he's taking Joseph Campbell's thousands of pages of reading and distilling them into 1,000 words, but done through this kind of book. And I had written this because Rwanda was going on, Yugoslavia is going on. This guy just got fired because of his religion. I was doing it for these adult reasons, and I got a kids award. So book 1 did fine. Book 2 came about, What's in a Color, and I had my first skirmish with the ministry. And I didn't realize it at the time until my 3rd book got stopped. But my second book, basically, book came out about a land called Rainbow Land, where everybody's a half circle. And he expects them to accept him, because he's a half circle too, the main character, but they don't, because in Rainbow Land, they judge you according to the color of your bow tie and where it is on the rainbow. So red is better than orange, better than yellow, all the way down to violet, the worst place in society. And they have marriage laws, of course, like any good society would. If you have a red bow tie, you can't marry anybody with a blue ribbon, because red and blue gives you what? Purple, the last place on the rainbow. And also NYU's color, by the way. So he asked them why they live their life in that way. And so he points up at the sky and shows at the rainbow. And they point up at the sky and say it's the natural order of things. And he points at the reflection of the rainbow in the river and shows them what's on top is now on the bottom. And shows them that nobody's better than anybody based on those bases. And that book got passed. But here's where I had my skirmish. So I got told, I said, what's the word for rainbow in Arabic? Qaws qazah. Exactly. I was told, you can't use qaws qazah. I said, why? They said, use qaws matar. I said, why? They said, well, qazah is ism min asami shaitan, one of the names of the devil. So I said, qaws qazah has been the Arabic word for rainbow for 2,000 years or more. You want me to translate the English word rainbow into Arabic, qaws matar, instead of using the Arabic word? They said, yes. I said, do I have to do this? They said, no. I said, okay, I choose not to do it. I didn't do it. Book 3 gets stopped. Fun stuff being a writer. So in book 3, I wrote for my son Hamid, my first son when he was born in 1997. Took me months to come up with a story, but only a few days to execute because they're very simple books. But basically in book 3, he goes to a land called Thailand where neckties, not bow ties. And in Thailand, spelled T-I-E, and in Thailand, he sees this character that's 10 times the size of his father in a picture before going, and he asks his father, what is this place? And his father explains, he goes, in Thailand, they're all huge. They're much bigger than bouncy landers and rainbow landers, but they have this law, is they can't wear new ties. They have to wear the ties of their father who wears the tie of his father before him. So it's a tie, but it's also a tie to the past. They get to Thailand, and for one reason, nobody knows why, all the Thailanders are now the same size as the bouncy landers. But because of their laws, their ties are disproportionate to their body size. So when they roll, their ties get under them, make them slow and inefficient. And when they bounce, their ties cover their eyes. They don't know where they're going to land. And those that take off their ties in protest get shunned. And so Bouncy Jr. has asked to see this law, and the law says you must wear of the ties of your fathers, not the ties of your father. So they get every tie in town, every tailor in town, and from the same material, they cut out new ties to better serve their modern day needs. So I get asked point blank, this is about the Quran, isn't it? And I said, huh? I wrote this for Hamid because when I'm 50 and he's 25 or maybe earlier and we have this tug about tradition and modernity, that's what this is about. These books are intended to reflect the reader's soul. Do you think people reading this in Tokyo or New York are going to think Quran? They're not. They're going to think other stuff that's relevant, but not that. So book couldn't get published and I quit writing at the age of 27. I can't do Starving Artist, as you can tell, but I can do Angry Young Man pretty well. And so I quit. Went to graduate school and did my doctorate in clinical psychology, did a few master's degrees, and I worked at Bellevue Hospital in the Survivors of Political Torture program. Spent 2 years, because I speak Arabic, my patients came out of Arab prisons, people tortured for all kinds of reasons. Not that there's ever a reason. And there were people there from all over the world. Contrary to the media, the Arab world does not have a monopoly on how not to treat others. Did that for a couple of years, needed a break. Went to business school for my own torture. And my reaction to Finance 101, they called it baby finance. I said, this thing grows up, And then at the age of 32, I just turned 32, I was in a cab with my mom and my sister going on what I call a pilgrimage that every Kuwaiti must make once in their lifetime from Edgware Road to Harrods. And in the cab, my sister turned to me and said, Naif, you had told me after school you'd go back to writing and I'd illustrate. She's actually very talented as a drawer, as an artist. And I said, yeah, I remember. She said, what do you think? And I wanted her to shut up. I mean, I'd never intended to write for kids to begin with. Now I have all these degrees, and the idea of going back to write for kids just is not something on my mind. But I couldn't say shut up, my mom was there. So I said, Samad, for me to go back, it's got to be something that has the potential of Pokemon. Otherwise, it just doesn't make sense for me. So she shut up. That wasn't me saying I could do Pokemon. That was me saying it had to be, something that could be that big. She shut up and I started to free associate as any New York trained psychologist would. I I said Pokemon. My next thought was there had been a fatwa issued against Pokemon. So it's illegal in some parts of the Islamic world. My next thought was, my God, what has happened to Islam? And who are these people making these random decisions for my children? My next thought was of Allah and how disappointed He must be. My next thought was Allah had 99 attributes. And ironically, it brought me full circle back to Pokemon, a concept of 1,000 attributes. I got out of the cab at Harrods. I turned to my sister. I said, what do you think of this? She loved it, but I didn't let her draw. I gave her a small piece of the company as a thank you for asking me the right question at the right time in my life, and I ran with it. I was able to raise money in my first round of financing within a few months. Actually, I raised $7 million from 54 investors in 8 countries. The first $1 million came from my classmates in business school, which is why I have investors from the US and Mexico and China and Lebanon and Egypt. I tell people of all my accomplishments, the one I'm proudest of is I'm the only Gulf national that went to Beirut and actually came out with money. It's never been done before. And what I sold my investors is this. I said, that Hollywood for years has been using biblical archetypes in their storytelling, right? So take, for example, the idea of Superman or Batman or Spider-Man. Superman is basically is missing his parents, is orphaned. His parents die on Krypton. He's sent by his parents to Earth in a ship, a spaceship, like Moses was on the Nile to new parents. And you hear the voice of his father Jor-El saying to Earth, I have sent to you my only son. That's the voice of God in the Bible speaking about Jesus Christ. But there's no religion in the storylines. Right? Same thing with Batman. His parents die when he's 6. And he gets his message to be Batman when a bat flies over his head. Again, it's like a metaphor for Gabriel coming down. Peter Parker's in the library in Manhattan taking a picture when the spider comes in from above and gives him his message through a bite, after which he becomes Spider-Man. These are biblical metaphors. And the reason this is being done is because there's a Western conspiracy. I'm kidding. The reason this is done is because the Bible is known as the greatest story ever told. The stories work. That's why they survive. And so the idea is to create new stories based on the older architecture. Right? So it's familiar, but it's also exciting. And the stories and the values the biblical values that are out there are values that no two people who have a good heart would disagree about. The minute you call them Christian, then it's like, oh, no, that's not part of that's wrong. Right? If you don't belong to that faith. But if you look at them as just neutral values, no two people would disagree about them. So what I sold my investors, my value add is I'd be able to work on Islamic archetypes. I'm the person who you don't want to be next to in a movie, because I'll tell you what's happening and why it's happening, how it's going to end. That's just the way my mind works. And so what I promised them is I'd be able to go into the Quran and pull out archetypes and build my stories based on those. Because if the Bible is the greatest story ever told, surely the Quran is the greatest story most told. More Muslims, and they pray 5 times a day, and that's lots of stories. So I went back in history to a pivotal moment in our history. I have to remember, I'm going to put you inside my head now, but I have to warn you, it's like Hotel California. You can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave. Okay? So this is 2003 when the cab ride happened. What had just happened? Baghdad had just fallen at the hand of the Americans a few months before. But Baghdad had fallen several times in the past. And one of the times that people keep bringing up when they talk is about the fall of Baghdad in 1258 and Dar al-Hikmah Library. And the thing is, Dar al-Hikmah Library was a very famous library at the time. And the caliph that set it up, Al-Ma'mun bin Harun Rashid, had told his advisors, translate any books you get your hands onto into Arabic and I'll pay you their weight in gold. After a while, his advisors complained. They said, Your Highness, the scholars are cheating. They're writing in bigger handwriting, take more gold. To which he said, let them be, because what they're giving us is worth a lot more than what we're paying them. Okay? So those books were not just Muslim books, they were Jewish books and Christian books and the Greek philosophers. They were any book that was worth anything back then. So that's, you guys watch Married with Children, you guys know who Al Bundy is? I call the Muslim world the Al Bundy of the world, right? Because Al Bundy is in his 50s and still talking about what happened in high school, right? Nothing is in between. And so for me, I wanted to kind of go back to that pivotal moment and change it and give an alternative version. So basically in my version, the Mongols come to invade Baghdad. You guys know the story. When the Mongols invade Baghdad, what happens to the books of Dar al-Hikmah Library? Some are burned. What happens to the rest? In the river. What happens to the river? Turns colors. Story everybody in our part of the region knows. I rewrote that story. In my version, the Mongols come. The librarians know this is going to happen. So they get together an alchemical solution of king's water that when mixed with 99 stones will be able to save all that culture and history and civilization in the books. but the Mongols get there first. The books and this king's water get thrown in the Tigris. Some librarians escape and dip the stones into the Tigris and suck up all that information that we think is lost to civilization. Those stones are then smuggled as 3 prayer beads of 33 stones each through Arabia into Andalusia and Spain, where they're safe for 200 years. But in 1492, 2 important things happen. The first is the fall of Grenada at the hands of King Ferdinand and Queen Isabel. The second is Columbus gets lost and finds America. Right? So 33 of the stones are smuggled onto the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria and are spread in the New World. 33 go on the Silk Road to China, South Asia, and Southeast Asia, and 33 are spread between Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. And now it's 2011, and there are 99 heroes from 99 different countries working together in teams of 3 to solve problems. That's the concept that I sold to the investors. Now, very central to the idea is this idea of Nur stones. So that Nur means light, and there's 99 of these stones that have the knowledge. Now, few things that are important to know about these stones. Number one, you don't choose the stone chooses you. So there's a King Arthur element. Not everybody who has the stone can use it. Second important thing to know is that there's a self-updating mechanism on the stones. Up until that point, they only have information to 1258, and some have to 1492. But for 600 years, there's no information. Now, the main bad guy, Rughal, does not want those stones to update. He's threatened with modernity and knowledge. The more he can limit access to information, the more he can control. Those are the 99 that he deceives into thinking that he's the good guy. Okay? The main good guy is not worried about the stones updating, and he understands that he won't be in control, but can still set a good leadership example, helping them find themselves. The main bad guy is named Rughal. Anybody know where the word Rughal comes from? Any Islamic history buff? So, the year of the elephant, the year the Prophet, peace be upon him, was born, King Abraha of Ethiopia sent an army to destroy the Kaaba, the most important shrine place in Islam. And the person that led that army, his name was Abu Rughal, father of Rughal. And basically, according to the Quran, God stopped Abraha's elephants by sending birds with stones who pelted the elephants and stopped them dead in their tracks. And he stopped them from destroying Islam, basically, or destroying the house of Islam or the Kaaba or what have you. So in the 99, this is one of the archetypes I use. Basically, Rughal is the main bad guy. Who stops him? The 99. They're not birds, but they're superheroes, and some of them can fly. And what do they use? They use their stones. Okay? No religion in the storylines. Nobody's religion is ever mentioned. Just good stories. So also with the 99, they work in teams of 3. So one of the issues in our part of the world is that we have this thing within Islam that you don't leave a boy and a girl alone together because the third person is the devil or temptation. That's pretty cross-cultural, right? So the idea was, I don't want to talk about religion in these storylines, but it's very important for these stories to get into places that might stop them for crossing some line in the air. So I thought teams of 3, 2 boys and a girl, 2 girls and a boy, 3 boys, 3 girls, no problem, right? And also, Carl Jung, the famous Swiss psychoanalyst, spoke about the importance of the number 3 in all cultures. Well, there's a blog, very intelligent blog written by somebody who's more on the religious end of the spectrum, who accused me of having been sent to promote the Trinity by the Vatican and the Pope to the Muslims here. So you believe who you want, I gave you my version of the story, okay? So, but basically, so that's why they work in teams of 3. I told my investors from the beginning that this could not be another made in a fifth world country production. This was going to be Superman or wasn't worth my time or their money. So from the very beginning, the people involved with us, the writers from Iron Man and X-Men and Power Rangers, the pencilers from Spider-Man, and we entered global consciousness back in 2006, the launch of the first book with the tagline, "Next Ramadan, the world will have new heroes." Here's some of the characters. So each of the characters, when they first get their power, abuse it. They use the stone for their own self-interest. And also, notice, Mujiba is an orphan. She lives with her uncle. See, some of these storylines keep coming in based on the stories that worked before. Mujiba is from Malaysia. She's a character that does wear the hijab, but some of them don't. Her main power is she's able to respond to any question that was in those books before they get updated, right? And as they get updated, she can answer questions in any book. But when she first gets her power, she starts going on game shows, making money on TV. Okay? Jabbar from Saudi is our character with the muscles. He uses his muscles. He's able to, in the beginning, he started breaking things because he could. Mumita was a fun one to name. The 99 attributes have a yin and a yang. There's the hegemonist, the strong, the powerful. Then there's the nice, the kind, the merciful. And I thought, am I going to have all the boys strong and all the girls kind of merciful? I said, you know what? I've met a few destroyers in my lifetime who are women. So Mumita Mumita is a girl here, is our fighting character. Wasif from India can stretch. We have Noura from the Emirates, who uses light. And next to her is one of my favorites, Batina. One of the 99 attributes is the hidden. So Batina is hidden. She's wearing the burqa, and she's able to hide the 99 at times that they need to be hidden, but she's a superhero. I came home to my wife and I told her, I said, I created one of the characters after you. She said, show me. So I showed her Batina. She said, that's not me. I said, they're your eyes. Look at the eyes. My life got changed forever, quite by accident, by somebody you might have either met or know, the editor-in-chief of The National, Hassan Fattah. I met Hassan in December 2005 for the first time. I saw him at the Arab Thought Foundation in Dubai. Early December, I cornered him and I pitched him the 99. I had no product, but I had passion. And I think I scared him. Because he said he'd write about it if I just go away. So he said, Naif, I'll write about this paragraph in the art section of the New York Times. That's where he was writing at the time. But, it could be next week, could be next month. It's not timely. Islam and cartoon is not a timely story. I said, okay. So I waited a month. I called him up. I said, Happy New Year. He said, thank you. We just had a baby. I said, congratulations. Like I care. When's the article coming out? He said, it's not timely. But what happens a few days after that is the Islamic world erupts in the Danish cartoon controversy. All of a sudden, Islam and cartoon became timely, right? Dumb luck. Next thing you know, the New York Times, flurry of emails and phone calls, and a full page goes out January 22nd, 2006 in the Sunday Times, which changed our life forever. Led to unbelievable worldwide coverage, all positive, and basically we were able to achieve what the ministries of information in the region have been trying to achieve, spending money for free, right? We don't have a public relations agency we work with. We don't have a PR person in the company. All the media we received has been just organic. And one of the things that's happening actually soon, there's a film coming out hopefully soon in New York at a film festival, but definitely on PBS in October, called Wham Bam Islam, which is the story of the making of the 99. It's independently financed, and they've been with us for 5 years, the camera, and the good, the bad, and the ugly, the supporters, the people who would rather my mother not given birth to me, the whole thing. And lots of fun stories that came up there, but basically the media coverage led to all kinds of stuff, including the 99 coming out. We were selling 8 licenses, in Chinese, Indonesian, Turkish. That was question one we had to answer. Is what we created something that can cross the borders of Kuwait and get outside, get into other territories? The answer is yes. How do we know? We know because we're able to sell licenses. Because this is not us putting up money to do it. It was people who paid us for this. Right? Question number two is what we have something that's in a format that can cross boundaries? So, okay, great, it's a comic book, now what? Well, the 99 Village theme park opened in Kuwait 2 years ago. So basically it was an existing park that one of our investors owned, that they wanted to retheme it with the 99, and they were happy because when you compare the year before to the year after, their foot traffic went up 101% and their revenue went up 56%. So we're talking about doing other ones with them as well. So very simple stuff. We were able to do 2 back-to-school product deals in Turkey, but the biggest deal we've done to date, which I'll be sharing with you a full episode of in a little bit, is we've created 26 episodes of animation with Endemol. Endemol is the largest independent TV producers in the world. They're the ones behind Big Brother, Star Academy, Deal or No Deal. It's the first time in their history they get involved in a project that they don't own. Okay? And 26 episodes were written in Hollywood by the writers behind Ben 10 and Batman and Superman. They're in 3D CGI. They're one of the first animated series in the world ever to be in HD format. And when they come out on TV, and which you'll see an episode in a few minutes, they're going to set the bar on TV animation globally the way Avatar did for cinema. I'm very proud of what we've been able to achieve. But beyond that, it's I tell people, the days of kind of saying we're the first one in Kuwait or the tallest building in Bahrain are over. There's nothing that can stop any one of us from being able to achieve something that's global right out of here. And early on, it was alluded to about President Obama's comment, and for the record, it was 2 minutes, not that I'm counting. But in February 2009, after he became president, it was rumored that he was going to be speaking from one of the Muslim countries. Nobody knew when or where, but I saw this as an opportunity. And so I went to DC Comics, to Paul Levitz, who was then the president and a friend of mine. And I said, Paul, Marvel pulled a real quick one on us. When on the inauguration day, they had a picture of the president on the cover of a Spider-Man issue of Spider-Man. It sold a lot of copies, and President Obama loved it because he loves comics. I said, that's great, good for them. But you can implement President Obama's vision through comic books. And the idea I sold to him is that after the president would reach out to the Muslim world from wherever it was he was going to do it from, we'd reach right back out as the 99 to the Justice League of America. So these comics are already out in New York and throughout the United States that have Batman and Superman and Wonder Woman and Aquaman working with Jama' and Noura and Jabbar, etc. And the story started off with distrust, and then it's very evident that the people causing the distrust are the bad guys, and they move over to trust. But my characters and the Justice League of America stand cape to shoulder as equals. And I think book 4 is out right now. This is the covers of book 1 and 2. We have Superman and Batman and a fully clothed Wonder Woman. First time she ever wears clothes, by the way. Took 60 years. And it took someone from the Gulf to be involved, but hey, you knew that, right? And then on the right, we have our Turkish character there. We have our Portuguese character, Mumita, and Jam, our Hungarian character with Flash and Green Lantern and Hawkman. What you're seeing there, they say every business plan starts on the back of a napkin. Mine started on the back of a Howard Johnson menu. On the other side, they're like fried eggs. But this is the vision. It's back in 2003, right? 99. We're going to do a new Muslim Archie. And the idea was kind of to take existing stuff and kind of Arabize or Islamicize them. And I got to meet the owners of Archie, and I said, I have an idea for an Islamic Archie. And one of them got very nervous. He said, Islamic Archie, how would that work? It was like one word, and I said, well, for 65 years, Archie has been trying to choose between Betty and Veronica. I say have him marry both of them, and let's move on to new storylines. Right? And I kept a straight face, and his jaw dropped. But this was the original vision on a piece of paper. This is what Tashkil Media Group looks like now. We've raised almost $40 million. We've created almost 1,000 jobs on 4 continents. And this is what it's all about. These are my boys. One of the hats I wear is I give lectures at the medical school of Kuwait. And a lecture I gave 2 years ago now, which I've given twice since, around this time of year, is on the biological basis of behavior. And in that lecture, I give the students 2 articles, one from the New York Times, one from New York Magazine. I take away the name of the writer, I take away the name of the city, it's all gone. All that's left are the facts. And I have them read them. And the first article is about a group called the Party of God. It wants to ban Valentine's Day because Valentine's a Christian saint. Red was made illegal, no flowers, any boys and girls caught flirting would get married off immediately. The second article is about a woman complaining because 6 bearded men in minivans pulled up and interrogated her on the street for talking to a man who wasn't related to her. And I asked the students where they thought these things took place. The first one, they said Saudi. There was no debate. The second one, they were split between Saudi and Afghanistan. What blew their mind was the first one took place in India. It was the party of a Hindu god. It had nothing to do with Islam. Not that that doesn't happen in other places that are Muslim. But that was what blew their mind. The second article took place in New York. It was an Orthodox Jewish community. Again, nothing to do with Islam. And I asked them why they think I'm giving them these articles on a class on the biological basis of behavior, and talk about how extremism is not about the text, it's about the person. You drop this person in any religion, he'll be the extremist in that religion. Right? But more importantly, in the articles, the people, and this is like the bigger issue for me, is that the people in the articles who are also spoken to by the reporter refer to the behavior as Talibanization. In other words, good Hindus and good Jews don't act this way. This is Islam's influence on Judaism and Hinduism. But what the students in Kuwait say? They said it's us. And this is dangerous when a people starts to self-identify as extreme. Very dangerous. And this needs to be broken. And I feel the only way to really properly address this is through media. So for me, it's very important, who my kids' role model is going to be growing up, and this is the beginning and the end. One of the frustrating parts of my project is everybody thinks I'm working for somebody else. Here, they think I'm working for the Americans, and there they think I have some kind of Islamic agenda. And of course, when President Obama spoke about the 9/9, that I must be working for the Americans. So I mean, it's always, and I tell them, the only people I'm working for are my kids. This is about their future. It's about how they're going to see the world. So I will basically, at this point, switch to showing you an episode of the animation. It's done, we've sold it into various markets, including the US, Ireland, Turkey, Middle East, North Africa. Soon we'll be announcing all of Asia and Australia. Europe has been a bit challenging presently, but we have them surrounded in Ireland in the north and Turkey in the south, so hopefully we'll move in. So with that, I'd love for you to see the first episode of season 1 in the animation, and then I'll come back on stage for question and answers. Thank you very much. Sorry. Yes. Why Missouri? Good. Well, actually, the good question. I can tell you. So my team originally, one of my cousins who was working with me initially as part of the creative team, Tariq, went to school in Missouri. That's why. Yeah, I mean yeah. Is that deep enough? Question? Yes.
Why superheroes to reposition Islam?
Why superheroes? It can be done any one of a number of ways. For me, it was about role models. See, this is one of the things that I like. This is a mostly Western audience. Let me ask you: how many of you have read *The Catcher in the Rye*? How many of you have killed in the name of that book? Nobody. There's usually at least one. Right? 30 years ago, Mark David Chapman shot and killed John Lennon with a copy of that book in his hand, and told the police the book drove him to kill Lennon. A year later, Hinckley tried to kill President Reagan. He too referred to the same book. So whose fault is that? The book or the deranged lunatic that pulled out their own messaging? So my thinking was, every time something terrible happens in the name of Islam, our leaders come out and say, that's not Islam. And they're absolutely correct. But there's limited responses in terms of what is Islam except for the status quo. And so what happens is that Islam becomes diluted. It becomes the average of what it was before that incident plus that incident. And that average is never good. And so what I wanted to do is go back to the same place that the bad guys pull out their messages and put good messages, create theme parks and animation and fun stuff that has no religious content whatsoever in it, right? But it's based on the same archetype, the same underpinning or the same infrastructure, if you will. And so I chose the route of superheroes. Now, when I had the idea for the 99, it wasn't so much that it was going to be superheroes, but a friend of mine from business school had done a documentary called Sex, Lies, and Superheroes. And he had met the top people at Marvel in DC, and he offered an introduction. So I went to meet them. And one of them explained to me that Captain Marvel used to say Shazam. And Shazam was actually an acronym for 6 Greek gods. The Z was Zeus and the H was Hercules. I had no idea. I wasn't really much of a comics person. And they convinced me this was a comics project of superheroes. And I went with it. But so I hope that answers the question.
Just an easy question. Other than downloading from the internet, is there any place that you can buy the comics? And if so, where? I've been looking and I
we stopped distributing the paper copies 4 months ago as we revisit our strategy. We're going to be going the digital route. But if you email me or email Frankie, or email just info@the99.org, the99.org, we can get you instructions on how to get copies. But the crossover copies, the ones with Batman and Superman, are on sale all over the United States. Yeah. Right now, they're just in the US. Yeah. Yes.
Hi, there was an article in, I think, one of the English papers where they were talking about the reaction to the 99, I think it was the cartoons in the States, and maybe the reaction to it in general, just the idea of it in Europe, if not in England specifically. So I don't know, how do you react to claims that you're trying to Islamify children, or Islam they're trying to take over. They were using actually very disturbing terms for a cartoon.
Share them. Share the term. Go ahead and share the terms.
Share the term. I think it was just the fact that they're this cartoon is coming into your house and it's trying to Islamify your children. So beware.
Yeah.
Don't let this affect your children's whatever their ideas, their mentalities. This is going to turn them all into God knows what. So, how do you react to something like that?
I haven't reacted yet. And the reason I haven't reacted yet is I just, I've turned down some pretty high-profile interviews in the U.S. because of this issue, and I turned them down. And there are shows I would love to be on, but the thing is that nobody likes controversy when it comes to a kids show, and so I've kept a low profile the past few months. What happened is, we had the most amazing recognition by President Obama, and because of that, we became an election issue. So the same people that went after the mosque at Ground Zero came after us. But I chose to just kind of not respond. And so it was 3 days of it, and then it went away. But of course, and hopefully it won't come back. It may not, I don't know. But the thing is, the proof's in the pudding. I mean, they say don't judge the book by the cover. These guys haven't even seen the cover. Right? I mean, as you've seen in front of you, there's nothing religious whatsoever in the content. And, if there's any indication, like if you see the reaction to my TED Talk or other talks I've given online, you'll see that none of the comments have anything to do with my talk. It's the atheists against the religious, then it's the different religions against each other, then it's the religious sects between each other. Everybody's fighting, nothing to do with what I had to say. So it's a challenge, for sure. But yes.
How do you reconcile the perception in the Gulf, in the Arab world, in the Islamic world about visualization being haram? First part of the question. Not related to that, you mentioned that you had difficulty getting the 99 into Europe. Can you please elaborate further about that experience, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
So on the first part, I mean, the thing, this goes back to the whole kind of, are we, see the problem, for example, the same tenet of kind of not using art and forbidding art was the second commandment of the 10 Commandments that God gave to Moses. Now, if it stayed in if we calcify the commandment as is and not allow human interpretation to extract kind of various meaning based on different people reading it and elaborating on it, and we just stick to that meaning from, I don't know how many thousands of years ago that is, 2,000 or 3,000 years, whatever, then the same thing would happen. But because that was translated into, from Hebrew to Greek to Latin, and then from Latin into English and German, different people weighed in on the subject, and that's not something that's forbidden within the religion. Say this is what this means. I think but the same issue was in Judaism. It was about art being worshipped, and therefore you should ban art. That was the issue, and it's the same issue within Islam. The idea that if art is worshipped, then you have it becomes shirk, right? And therefore it's against Islam. So some people say, okay, we don't know who's worshipping the art and who isn't. Let's just ban art. Well, you can ban art in your own house, and that's how I react to it. Like I don't read the things in the same way. In terms of Europe, it's been challenging in the sense that we're just not, we've sold it to a couple of broadcasters, but not to the others yet. Endemol still active in selling it, nothing. No, not that I'm aware of. Anyway, I hope not. Yes, sorry.
I think you can't ban art because you can't take a single step in your daily life without art. Everything depends on art. Your furniture, your house, your crockery, your dresses. So it's even in Islam you see that Holy Prophet, once he came and there was a curtain with figures, and he told Aisha to make cushions or something on the floor so that they don't distract while he's praying. So as you said that it's not for worshipping, but you can't just take art out of your even calligraphy in art, that in Quran, that is a form of art. Second thing I wanted to say that as you yourself said, there's no religious element in your cartoons. Then why you are saying that you're Islamizing? I think there's difference between making something Islamic or making something Arabic. Because Islam teaches everything good. It is, and you don't have anything there about Islam.
No, and it's not even about Arabizing either. But I mean, we have a saying in Kuwait, and maybe you have, every culture has the equivalent, but we say, if you're bitten by a snake, you become afraid of rope. Right? In the US, they say once bitten, twice shy. The idea being that, all of a sudden representations of that which bit you to begin with, you start to have a fear of. Right? And we can't say that nothing terrible has happened in the name of Islam recently. And because of that, every time Islam comes up, that's what. Let's say, for example, something terrible happens to us, God forbid, in this room, right? And you're taking a walk in London in Hyde Park, and you order an ice cream with a flake in it, and all of a sudden you start to have a panic attack, and you won't be able to tie it. But chances are that's going to happen because the flake is brown and this room has a brown carpet. That's how your brain is designed. Your brain is designed to protect you from things happening again and again. Right? So the idea that people kind of seeing anything to do with Islam and saying, oh, they're out to get us, they're out to Islamify our kid, that's normal.
That is because it's ignorance to Islam. Islam is misunderstood.
Yeah.
Even the ayats, verses which are quoted, they're understood in wrong context. You have to see in what context they are being used.
Yeah.
So I think it's a misunderstanding about Islam.
Yeah, right here.
Kind of the opposite of the earlier question. I'm here, I'm raising my kids, they're learning Arabic.
Good luck.
I'm interested in that. Yeah, believe me, I'm not helping with that. Do you think there's enough of a message for people to pick up on it? I mean, do you think, like, I've only seen the one episode, thought it was awesome, by the way.
Thank you.
Is the message going to get there? Is it there's a subtlety in there. Maybe it's not subtle enough. Maybe it's too subtle. That's something you have to wrestle with. But
the main messages I believe come across. The messages being that if you abuse that which you have, some people will take advantage of you. Messages of tolerance, not just of they happen to be from 99 countries. We don't elaborate that much, but there are scenes that happen in the Emirates and in Saudi and other places. But we don't say he is Saudi. Right? We don't do that. The Bill Cosby kind of way of doing it just happened to be a good guy from Saudi. Who knew one existed? He's an animation. My wife is Saudi. I can say that. But the idea being that so and also the tolerance happens on many levels because each of them have a power, and there's constantly a struggle about whose power is going to be used to solve this particular problem. So they have to be tolerant of one another, not just because of their different racial profiles, but also because, for example, in the comic book series, in issue 10, Jabbar wants to use his muscles to solve the problem, when Widad, our Filipino character, uses love to solve the problem and beats him, and he gets upset, right? Because he was ignored. How could you ignore him? He's the one with the muscles. And the idea that that's not the only, just because you can do it that way doesn't mean you should do it that way. So those ideas do come, and those aren't subtle, those are in your face. The other ones are vicarious. Right? The other ones are kind of seeing people, boys and girls, and some girls are stronger, some girls are more feminine, some girls are, this whole kind of spectrum of 99 ways of being a human being, if you will, are there. They're implicit. But about it being about, repositioning Islam, no. Even like Superman and Batman, most people watch that and enjoy it, have no idea it has anything to do with biblical archetypes, right? And this is at the end of the day, they're just good stories done in animation that will captivate kids to watch and learn those positive lessons that, hey, guess what? Those are our values too. And the idea is that, when I was raising money the first time, one person who had the privilege, was a really good guy. I'm glad I didn't have to take his money though, because he was very conservative and said, this is a fantastic idea. Are the characters going to pray? I said, maybe, but that's between them and God. It's not going to show up in the comic book. Right? And he said, why not? I said, because I'm not doing this for religion, I'm doing this for culture. And he goes, but we're all men of religion. I said, okay, and we're all men of business. He said, yes. I said, how are they going to pray? He said, the Sunni way. I said, really? Because once you start getting into people's behavior, that's what differentiates people. When you talk about values, no, people aren't going to, people don't disagree about what good and what bad is. So I don't believe that there's any issue in the world that when boiled down to its basics, you'll find two people that disagree about them. Once they have labels that have to do with the religion or whatever, that's the... one of the fascinating things, and this is my psychologist hat keeps coming in, but chimpanzees go to war over territory, right? They will systematically kill members of another tribe for territory, right? We, in essence, have evolved, but we still fight chimpanzee wars, not because in the end of the day, territory is a line in the sand, but what's religion other than a line in the air? It's intellectual territory. Right? So it's just, it's fascinating to watch as a psychologist. It's not fun to be in the middle of it when people accuse me of Islamifying their children. Yes?
The film was a story of enlightenment and empowerment. And anytime that enlightenment comes up in any situation, it will always come under attack. So my vision of it is that it's beyond religion, really. It's just about unification and all human beings just reaching that point of facing reality of who they are and just owning up to both sides of their existence. So it's an awesome piece of work. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I was wondering, are any of the characters sort of subtly or explicitly Jewish? And do any of the events subtly or explicitly happen in Israel?
So I'm probably one of the only Arabs you'll ever meet whose parents accidentally sent him to a Jewish summer camp in New Hampshire. It was called Camp Robin Hood. And I told them after, when I finally realized 7, 8 years into it, I said, you should have called it Camp Robin Yehud. At least then we would have known, that it was, my own kids now go there. But I'll answer your question the same way I answered the question when I was asked when I spoke at the U.S. Naval Academy. I said, you don't need me to tell you, as the U.S. military, how difficult it is to fight 2 wars at the same time. Okay? So there are so many issues one can tackle through the 99. But right now I'm looking for, I'm kind of not getting into those kind of issues specifically. So, is there an Israeli member of the 99? Not yet, and there isn't a Palestinian one yet, and we don't know. I haven't touched that yet. But it'll never be anti-Semitic in any way, shape, or form. So that much I can guarantee you. But beyond that, even if I tried, my series editor's name is Stan Berkowitz. He says he's Italian, but I don't think so. Yes, in the back.
I was wondering about the animation. Why did you choose a 3D animation instead of just the usual animation? Because I'm thinking of Ben 10 since you mentioned it.
Sure. That's a great question. My best answer is I don't know. Because I focus on the content. I focus on what I can do best, and I've been able to find world-class partners to work on with everything else. And so Endemol, when they came to us to do this with us, they actually, the fun story with Endemol is I've been mentored. I won't drop his name, but mentored for 4 years by a Hollywood name that all of you will know, and he basically saw me as a favorite, a friend of his, and then it's developed into a friendship, and also insulted me publicly once in New York when he saw one of the contracts we were about to sign and looked at it, looked up at me, and he said, I thought you said you went to business school. Not good. Tore it apart and sent me back to them. But basically, I'm sorry, I kind of digressed on that and lost the question. Can you give it to me real quick again? 3D. Yes. So basically, I've been getting the advice of people. So when Endemol approached us, when Endemol approached us, I was really excited but really concerned because Endemol had never done animation before, even though they're huge. And so I spoke to my mentor and I said, listen, Endemol called me. He said, I know. I said, okay. And he said, I know that you might be nervous because they haven't done animation. Talk to them. There's news I can't tell you yet, but I promise you'll know before the media does. I said, okay. So I got to know them, got to know the guys and stuff. And then I found out a day before it was announced who their new CEO was. Enon Kreis, who used to run Fox Kids. And he was involved with Power Rangers when they became a big thing. And he wanted this to be his baby in Endemol. And so all of a sudden you had the CEO of a huge media company who's adopting your kids, right? And so it was through consultation with them that we took that route. So I wouldn't know a 2D animation if it hit me in the head. I mean, I'm not very technical with these stuff. So, yes, in the back.
You mentioned that you made this for your kids, and I'm curious what they think of it and what it means to them. As I say, my 13-year-old chooses to read it. My 2-year-old choose it. My kids love it. The older two read it. The Rayyan, who's my Scooby-Doo addict, or was my Scooby-Doo addict, he's recovered now.
he's also a big fan of the animation, and they all watch it. And it's fun because we watch it together. And I actually took the 3 older ones with me to India when I saw the first episode ever. We went to India to watch together on a movie screen because the actual animation is done in India. And I mean, what I told them after watching it is the one thing I want you to learn from this is anything is possible. Anything. I mean, that's that's no other lesson that I can really pass on to them. Yes, in the back. Back and then gentleman there. Yeah.
Considering how transformative this can be for the region, what sort of issues or controversies do you see coming out of it for audiences in the region specifically?
Well, as many as they want, or as little as they want. Initially, I knew coming into this, when I first had the idea to do this, I knew how, I tell my investors now, the only person crazier than me is them, right? Because, think about it. I come to them in 2003, this is before the markets went up and people thought they had money, right? Went and said, I have this idea, I want to create this global brand based on Islamic archetypes out of the media capital of the world, Kuwait City, right? And it's going to go global, right? Initially, I knew that an idea like this, that when I started, I'd get resistance because, when a new thing gets introduced to your body, it doesn't matter if it's good for you or bad for you, the white blood cells are going to attack it to destroy it. It happens in the mind too. Cognitive dissonance is all about that. If something new comes, people try to bury that. If there's no drawer to put it in, they try to put it in a coffin, right? So I knew that. And so and that protected me initially, and I would resist stuff. So I would get people saying, you should talk to some sheikhs about this and get their approval. I'd avoid that like the plague, right? Because who knows which sheikh fought with which sheikh when they were 3 at what playground, and if this guy likes it, that guy's not going to like it because this guy. I don't want to get involved in that, right? And so I'd avoid that. And if I get pushed, I'd say, well, I spoke to Emo Phillips. They'd say, Sheikh Phillips, we haven't heard of him. I said, well, that's because he's a comedian. Like, well, what do you mean? Well, Emo Phillips used to say that every night to the age of 10, he used to pray to God for a bicycle. And at 10, he realized that God didn't work that way, so he stole the bicycle and started praying for forgiveness.
Own perspective, what are the target audience? Is it the enlightened Muslim families living in West, or is it broader than that? Can you define that?
It's global. It's anybody who watches Spider-Man, anybody who watches Superman. The only difference is that it's based on a different set of archetypes. But it's good storytelling. There's nothing religious about this. It's just that it's going to be a little bit different. Yeah. Did you ever hear me call it Islamic? It's inspired by Islam, but it's not Islamic. Yeah. Go ahead.
Do you feel like you're creating a new community in the Arab world now that you're like the 99 is the first Islamic superheroes is kind of how it's been built?
He said Islamic. That wasn't me. It was him.
I'm saying that's how it's been built at least.
I'm teasing, yeah.
So, okay. The second and the third, and DC Comics started out as this thing, and you have the Justice League, but then you have other things within the DC universe. Do you kind of see Tashkil becoming that sort of idea, and how far do you see it expanding?
It depends. It depends on investor appetite. It depends on the market. It depends on a lot of things. There's a lot that can get done. When you talk about one of my mentors on this project, who I don't mind using the name, who I'll use the name of, is Fadi Ghandour, who you guys might know, who's the founder of Aramex. And Fadi, actually, fun story about the Obama thing. So he was next to me when the president spoke about the 99, and then the president came down and shook his hand and my hand, and he said, I want some comic books. And everybody there had copies except me. Why would I carry any? I have so many at home. And so I said, I'm sorry, Mr. President, I don't have any. He goes, send them. And then next thing you know, there was like a 1-2 between Arif Naghvi of Abraj and Fadi. Next thing you know, Fadi has put 3 copies in Barack Obama's hand like this. And the president, he didn't take them. He looked around for Secret Service. There's nobody next to him. So he took them out of respect. Right? But the next day in Dubai, in Kip's report and other online sites, it said Aramex delivers into the hands of the president. So good for Fadi. But one of the stories that I heard Fadi tell at that conference is actually one that was also the one comment I made during the whole what's happening in Tunisia and Egypt and Libya, etc. Is basically in 1954, Roger Bannister was the first person ever to run a mile in under 4 minutes. But because the media reported it and people saw that it was possible, within 3 years, 16 people had done it by 1957. So once people know that things are possible, they will try them. When they're told that they're not, it's less likely to happen. So, I hope plenty of people pop up and do stuff that's inspired by this project, as I was inspired by others. Yes.
Hi. I have to tell you the truth. I was coming here and I was very skeptical because I am from Beirut, Lebanon, and as you might know, politics in my country is not the prettiest thing. And so
But it's pretty everywhere else.
Yes, kind of. So I saw the 99 and I did my research and I was like, oh no, this guy's bringing religion into the topic, into the story. But I mean, I'm swayed, I'm convinced. So well done.
Thank you. Is that before or after you heard I got money from Lebanon? Questions? Yes?
Hi, it's about the production of the 99. We all know that in the media it's quite a challenge to portray a global community in regarding the line between multiculturalism without getting like stereotypes. I would like to know how you work with that.
We only stereotype people with French accents. Besides that, we don't stereotype anybody. So one of the actually I was just talking about that issue with somebody in episode 10 of the 99. It's in Egypt, and there are 2 kids on the street who are beggars. Okay. And initially there was one of them, and he wasn't such a nice person. Right? He was the stereotype Egyptian beggar kid. And so what I did is I added another one with him, who was nice and who was doing the right thing. He just happened to be poor and on the streets. And so if ever there's a situation where there's a character that seems to be stereotypical, we'll balance it out. Like the question that I got initially about the good guy and the bad guy looking alike. So we'll always try to balance that out when we can. Just one more?
Unless you want to go. I know you've got special cars to go on and on, but...
It's up to you. It's okay.
So, a couple more?
Sure, a couple more is fine. Yes, in the back.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the talk. Honestly, I knew nothing about the 99 before coming here, and I'm very pleasantly surprised. My question is, are there any issues you wouldn't tackle through this comic? Do you have like red lines that you'd rather never tackle? And I know that you're not trying to portray Islam through this comic, but one way or the other, people are always going to link Islam to this comic because that's the basis of what I think you're trying to get the attributes of what Islam is and trying to, well, you know what I mean. But are there any issues, specific issues that you'd rather not tackle with this, show in this comic in any storyline whatsoever?
By the way, there's Hassan Fattah who changed my life from the National. Thank you, Hassan. Basically, I don't get into religion in the storylines. I don't get into politics in the storylines. I won't get into real things that happen. I just get into what tomorrow can look like without tackling specific stuff. I know that's general, but I just keep away because the thing is, the stories that are in the news today and yesterday and tomorrow, that's stuff that we all have political opinions about, good or bad, whatever. But I don't want to get into that because I want to get into issues where things are neutral. Think back to Bill Cosby, very neutral. He dealt with the issue not by saying blacks are good or it's okay to be African American. He just had a positive African American family. That was it. And it worked. Yes, 1 and 2.
Hi. This is more of a comment and less of a question. I first saw your TED talk about a month ago, and then it got me interested in this. And I haven't really read the comics or anything yet. I haven't seen any episodes except what you showed us. And what I noticed myself doing is, you say that it's just Islamic inspired and not the series itself has no hint of religion or anything. I agree. But when I was watching it, I noticed myself seeing it with Islamic tinted glasses, and not in a bad way.
Where do you get those?
Only I have. but not in a bad way, but I kind of expected, I tried to find out all the Islamic references from it, and I expected the guy in the beginning, John Wells, to have a Muslim name, but he doesn't. But so, I mean, what do you think about that? That people are going to, there's so much media coverage already, and people are going to start seeing this with Islamic tinted glasses, good or bad, I don't know.
So, I mean, his name is John Weller, but his superhero name is Dar, right? So, there's always that Islam-inspired stuff going on. But the thing is, see, I get asked whether there's nothing in here that's different. It's not, and I said that's the point. That's the point, because on the values level, we are all the same. You know, so that I mean, your question is your answer. So, and there's one more that over here.
I grew up reading Brazilian comics and Argentinian comics. And who inspires you? And the other question is how much psychology you put in those in your work.
So on question one, I mean, I've been inspired by a lot of people during my life. I mean, most of them you won't know who they are. Just people in my life who have tried to, you know, not given up because things were a certain way. And you know, the advice that I've gotten from people who I pass on is basically, in this part of the world, you know, when you want to start something and do something, never ask for forgiveness, never ask for permission, always ask for forgiveness. You know, just kind of go out and do it. I'm sorry, in the second part of your question?
How much psychology?
There's a lot of psychology. There's a lot of psychology involved in you know, when I was 9, I told my parents I was going to be a writer when I grew up, and they said, that's a great hobby, Naif, don't think about doing it for work, you know, and which was good advice. And so I became a psychologist and took that, but it was about learning character development, conflict, and so you'll see kind of, one of the episodes is actually, you know, chapter 10 and chapter 11 from Atkinson's book on psychology, and because it's the chapters on emotion and motivation just done. You wouldn't know when you watch it, but I know, because I know what I've put in there. So there's a lot of that going on in the series.
And another question. And you're a very fun person, and your cartoon seems a little bit more serious. So are you?
Well, the first, you know, the first episode. Some of them are lighter, some of them are darker. This one is a bit darker because it's focusing on the history and the fall of Baghdad and giving you the backstory. But some of the characters are funny characters. Some of them are more serious. Mumita, who's our fighting character, doesn't tell many jokes, you know. But for example, we have our Indonesian character Fattah, tells, you know, it's very funny, you know. So it all depends on the character themselves.
Thank you.
So one last one. Okay, 2 here, and then that's it. And the back?
Thank you. I just had a question. I think children shape the future to a large extent. And I remember 9/11 we were in elementary school when it happened. And I think Orientalism in mainstream cinema and in the media, which you allude to, has happened well before 9/11, going back to the beginning of film of the Arab and Muslim world. Yeah. And I just think as a Muslim American, I haven't seen many hijabs doing nice, peaceful, hijab happy things that cross this universal
like jumping
moral
rope
code.
with the hijab, or?
I mean, yeah, or baking a cookie, you know, like so will it be, I mean, this is sets an amazing precedent, alluding again to your Cosby analogy, and will it be, and how long, and I know you said this could set a precedent and all these things, but how long will it be before we start to see that really begin to change? Is it within 5 years, 10 years, or is it going to take your children to grow to be your age, who come up with the next leading project to surpass this and begin to really?
I really don't know. I mean, that's. I mean, it could be, you know, it could be next year, it could be in 100 years, it could be never. I mean, there's really no way to kind of tell that. It just depends on. It depends on what happens in terms of this thing being adopted into as many channels as possible. So we're negotiating gaming rights right now. We're negotiating a Hollywood film, a live action. So there's all kinds of stuff that we're in the talks for now. We just raised our last round of capital through Abraj Capital in Dubai, which I'm very proud of, and so it's a process. So it just depends. I mean, I don't know. I want to tell you tomorrow, but I don't know.
Oh, but this is the first step in the mile, and I thank you as long as everybody else for your efforts.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So and then we're going to end with the hijab, the fun hijab.
Okay.
There you go.
So it became clear to me from your lecture, and especially the cab story, is that the 99 is really a birth out of the business side.
Did you say Israeli or Israeli?
No,
okay.
Israeli.
Okay.
Is really a birth, is created from this business side of you after business school, but also this creative side that's been evident since those first children's books. So my
Don't
question,
call them children's books.
Okay, sorry.
No, okay.
Yeah, there you go. Adult-oriented children's books. So my question to you is, if in a horrible situation, the business side doesn't work out, if everything just falls, falls
into the Tigris River and the changes color,
yes,
everything?
Yeah.
Okay.
Would you continue with the 99? Is it enough of a passion project to you at this point, the story side, the creative side, for you to this be something you're doing for the rest of your life?
You feed my family? I mean, I don't know. I mean, that's. I mean, I don't know. I mean, certainly, I'm very passionate about. I mean, this is an issue that I've been working on in different ways, in different writings. From my columns that are published in the States to this, for 20 years. It's always the thing about tolerance has always been, what I've been working on. And so. The answer to your question is yes, in some way or shape or form, I'll be attacking those same subjects.
Thanks for taking my question.
Yeah.
First, I wanted to thank you for the talk and for showing us the episode. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you.
You mentioned in your talk that you'd be using Quranic verses within...
No, Quranic archetypes.
Archetypes. Were you planning to use any types of verses? I was just curious.
No.
All right. Thanks, that's all.
Yeah. So thank you very much.